First of all, there was no way to save everyone. The outbreak was too far gone. The armed forces had already been too badly weakened to effectively isolate the threat, and spread so thinly throughout the country they could only grow weaker with each passing day. Our forces had to be consolidated, withdrawn to a special safe zone, which hopefully would be aided by some natural obstacles such as mountains, rivers, or even an offshore island. Once concentrated within this zone, the armed forces could eradicate the infestation within its borders, then use what resources were available to defend it against further onslaughts of the living dead. That was the first part of the plan. And it made as much sense as any conventional military retreat. The second part of the plan dealt with the evacuation of civilians, and this could not have been envisioned by anyone else but Redeka. In his mind, only a small fraction of the civilian population could be evacuated to the safe zone. These people would be saved not only to provide a labor pool for the eventual wartime economic restoration, but also to preserve the legitimacy and stability of the government, to prove to those already within the zone that the leaders were looking out for them. There was another reason for this partial evacuation, an eminently logical and insidiously dark reason that many believe will forever ensure Redeka the tallest pedestal in the pantheon of hell. Those who were left behind were to be herded into special isolated zones. They were to be human bait, distracting the undead from following the retreating army to their safe zone. Redeka argued that these isolated, uninfected refugees must be kept alive, well defended and even resupplied if possible, so as to keep the undead hordes firmly rooted to the spot. You see the genius, the sickness. Keeping people as prisoners because every zombie besieging those survivors will be one less zombie throwing itself against our defenses. That was the moment when the Afrikaner agent looked up at Redeka and crossed himself. "God help you, man," he said. "God help us all," said one of the other agents, a black one who appeared to be in charge of the operation. "Now let's get him out of here." Within minutes, they were on a chopper for Kimberley, the very underground base where Redeka had first written Orange 84. He was ushered into a meeting of the president's surviving cabinet, where his report was read aloud to the room. You should have heard the uproar, with no voice louder than the defense minister's. "Unacceptable," he bellowed. He was a Zulu, a ferocious man who would rather be fighting in the streets than cowering in a bunker. "Running, hiding, cowering behind mountains, never." He was not alone. "How can we explain this to our people?" said the vice president. "They'll be after our backsides faster than those things out there." The president was incensed, glaring at the safety security minister in command of the NIA. "This is what you bring me," he snapped, the maniacal ramblings of an apartheid war criminal. "Mr. President," said the clearly rattled security minister, "you instructed me to find and retrieve Mr. Redeka." "I did no such thing," the president shot back. "But, Mr. President," the security minister stammered, "I received an order." "Not from me," bellowed the president. "From me." That was another voice. A soft, quiet voice that silenced the room like thunder from God himself. He had been sitting against the back wall. Now he stood, hunched over by age and supported by canes, but with a spirit as strong and vital as it had ever been. The elder statesman, the father of our new democracy, the man whose birth name had been Rolelala, which some have translated simply into troublemaker. As he stood, all others sat, all others except poor Redeka. The old man locked eyes on him, smiled with that warm squint so famous the world over, and said, "Molo Nlobo Wam. Greetings, person of my region." He walked slowly over to Paul, turned to the governing body of South Africa, then lifted the pages from the Afrikaner's hand and said in a suddenly loud and youthful voice, "This plan will save our people." Then gesturing to Paul, he said, "This man will save our people." And then came that moment, the one that historians will probably debate until the subject fades from memory. He embraced the white Afrikaner. To anyone else, this was simply his signature bear hug, but to Paul Redeka, I know that the majority of psychobiographers continue to paint this man without a soul. That is the generally accepted notion. Paul Redeka, no feelings, no compassion, no heart. However, one of our most revered authors, Biko's old friend and biographer, postulates that Redeka was actually a deeply sensitive man. Too sensitive, in fact, for life in apartheid South Africa. He insists that Redeka's lifelong jihad against emotion was the only way to protect his sanity from the hatred and brutality he witnessed on a daily basis. Not much is known about Redeka's childhood, whether he even had parents or was raised by the state, whether he had friends or was ever loved in any way. Those who knew him from work were hard-pressed to remember witnessing any social interaction or even any physical act of warmth. The embrace by our nation's father, this genuine emotion, piercing his impenetrable shell.
Azania smiles sheepishly.
Perhaps this is all too sentimental. For all we know, he was a heartless monster, and the old man's embrace had absolutely no impact. But I can tell you that that was the last day anyone ever saw Paul Redeka. Even now, no one knows what really happened to him. That is when I stepped in. In those chaotic weeks when the Redeka plan was implemented throughout the country. It took some convincing, to say the least, but once I'd convinced them that I'd worked for many years with Paul Redeka and, more importantly, I understood his way of thinking better than anyone left alive in South Africa, how could they refuse? I worked on the retreat, then afterward during the consolidation months, and right up until the end of the war. At least they were appreciative of my services. Why else would they grant me such luxurious accommodations? Paul Redeka, an angel and a devil. Some hate him, some worship him. Me, I just pity him. If he is alive, somewhere out there, I sincerely hope he has found his peace.
After a parting embrace from my guest, I'm driven back to my ferry for the mainland. Security is tight as I sign out my entrance badge. The tall Afrikaner guard photographs me again. "Can't be too careful, man," he says, handing me the pen. "A lot of people out there want to send him to hell." I sign next to my name, under the heading of Robben Island Psychiatric Institution. Name of patient you're visiting? Paul Rediker.